Assalamu alaikum, peace be with you and welcome to Islam and Life with me, Tariq Ramadan, broadcasting from London. In today's show we ask the question, should Western Muslims join the army?
The great debate on whether Muslims can or should join the military of non-Muslim nations intensified post-September 11. Muslims who opposed the terrorist events of that day joined the US and British armies in an act of dissociating with terrorism and showing loyalty to their country of residence. While some have praised them for serving in the army, many have condemned them, claiming they are performing an act of sin by joining an army controlled by non-Muslims who is targeting their Muslim brethren. But some scholars state it is permissible to join the army as long as they do not kill any Muslims. This then poses the question of allegiance. This week's Islam and Life asks, should Western Muslims join the army?
Indeed, it's a very old question for Muslims living in minority in non-Muslim majority countries. And this is much before September the 11th, where the question was asked, should the Muslims be involved in foreign or perceived as foreign armies, to be involved in wars where sometimes they have to deal with non-Muslims and Muslims. And these were questions that we had under colonizations in Africa, in North African countries, in India, in other countries. And then after September the 11th and 7/7 in the UK, the questions was even more critical and sensitive. What should we do if, as Western Muslims, we are involved in the American army going to Afghanistan, or in any kind of European armies or Australian armies or whatever, when we have to deal with situations where we might be involved with Muslims and sometimes promoting a war which is not based on justice but exploitation, colonization and killing innocent people. So it's a very critical question in political terms and in legal Islamic terms, and these are questions that are tackled by some Muslim scholars, intellectuals, politicians, and the answers are quite contradictory. Some are saying you can, others are saying it's impossible, and some others are saying you have to show your loyalty to the country you belong to, and it could be a Western country. So to answer all these questions, I am joined by author and academic Dr. Sayyid Inayatullah Andrabi. Thank you so much for being with us today. A critical question indeed, because it's critical. Why? Because we are dealing with the Islamic reference, we are dealing with non-Muslim majority country, and sometimes these non-Muslim majority countries in the West, the United States of America, Canada, European countries, are involved in wars where, in the name of this war on terror, or in the name of retaliation, as it happened in Afghanistan, the enemies are Muslims, and sometimes the very essence of the war is questionable. Is it right to go and to kill people? And we had this question before. So what would be the critical question when it comes to Western Muslims being citizens? How would you put this question? How do we address this question as Western Muslims?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think the crux of the matter here for a conscious Muslim, British, Western or any Muslim, is the historical role. We are not just Muslims, we have to be living as Muslims. That means we have to be sensitive to the time and space where we live. We have to be sensitive to where we are, on which side we are. Because apart from individual, when it comes to society, when it comes to the collectivity, then the question of the vision of future comes up. Every society, every nation, every state runs governments, and they create a future for tomorrow. They are heading towards the future. Now, this vision is based on their ideals, values, what they think the world should be after 50 years, what British government is aspiring for, what other governments are aspiring for.
But just to come to that point before you carry on, I think it's a critical question if you say, oh, we have to deal with our future, with our hopes for example, the States or Britain. Because at the end, if you listen to what some politicians are saying, and intellectuals or leaders or, prime ministers, for example, they would say, for the sake of our country, we are going to free other countries. And we heard here that the war in Iraq, with all the lies that we knew, were behind the whole discussion on the weapon of mass destruction and all this. At the end, this was for a better future. So what should be the position of Muslims when they deal with this? Because what would you say to people? Say, okay, you know what? You Western Muslims, you have to answer this question. Are you loyal only to Islam, or are you loyal to the country?
I hope the point I will make will make this also clear. The either or thing that we have brought up. The point I wanted to make is, and very honestly, and we should be honest about it, there should be no, political leaders make all types of vague statements, but when it comes to understanding, we should be absolutely honest. What we must understand is, the vision of future determines the civilizations. At the moment, the time and space, the time and day and age we are living in, I and you, we can differentiate between the Islamic or Muslim civilization in whatever form and a secular civilization, which emerged after the colonial conquests and all this.
Which
is represented by the West.
Okay, we must or we can't?
We must.
Yes.
This is a differentiation.
Yes.
The secular civilization ideally wants to finish and remove any traces of divine guidance, any kind of divine sort of intervention in human affairs. They want to keep it absolutely to human pleasure. What people would like to go for. We don't want any divine instruction. Opposite is true of the Muslim civilization. Muslim civilization wants to, ideally, it wants to bring up values like justice, fairness, and all this. So at the level of the objectives, we differ.
But I would say, if you listen to what was said by the American president, in God we trust, and God bless America, and he's always referring to God and justice. Is this enough to differentiate between the two?
No, that is in God we trust. It is what they write on the dollar also. But we are talking we are talking about the political objectives. They are actively working for.
But let me just add something, that when, for example, Tony Blair was questioned about Iraq just after he accepted to follow in the footsteps of the States, he said that in conscience before God, he said it himself as a believer, this was the right thing to do. So he was putting this in religious terms, not only in something which is a secular setting or understanding.
Yeah, that is a spin, actually. That is what they... in USA you will see the neocons do it. They add a moral dimension to their colonial aims. Their colonial aims, and they just give it a moral flavor. That's there is no substance in it. But my point was that since the civilizational goals, the political objectives of the civilization are different from what the Western civilization and the Muslim civilization, so that I think should be the basic consideration, the basic logic that should underlie when we discuss should they join the army or should they not. Because the army is meant to advance the aims of the civilization, aims of the state. Now, if you take the joining army, if you take it simply as a job, you're doing a job. Now, when you come for an interview to a job, they ask you what makes you, why are you interested? You can't say simply earning. You have to say, I'm passionate about it. I want it. I like it. I mean, you are motivated. But
that's fine. But with war, it's a bit different. What should an American citizen or British citizen or any type of Western citizen say or do when he is called by the army and the state and the nation? You belong to a nation and say, now you have to go. And you have to go to Afghanistan, or you have to go to Iraq, or you have to go to Africa, or you have to go to South America, another non-Muslim majority country. You have to. This is, you belong to the country and you have to show your sense of loyalty. Some scholars would say, if it's not to a non-Muslim, if it's to a non-Muslim majority country that you are fighting, you can go, but you cannot go for to fight against Muslims. Some others are saying in both situations you can't go, and others would say no, it's not as simple as that. What should they do?
Yeah, I think the Muslim, non-Muslim may not be that relevant here. It's basically the question of justice. What are you going for? Are you going to kill what God has forbidden? Are you going to do what Allah has forbidden? Are you going to commit injustices, whether against Muslims or non-Muslims? Injustice, wherever it is committed, is injustice and condemned. Whether it is committed against a Muslim or a non-Muslim. A Muslim woman, if she is raped, or a non-Muslim woman, absolutely no difference. It is condemnable equally. So that may not be the right thing. But what a British or a US citizen or a French citizen, I mean, if they themselves are absolutely conscious about what they are doing, they should be raising questions about their war aims and all this. But what Muslims should be absolutely keen is they have something to offer. When I say I am loyal to Britain, what I say? I do not say that I am loyal to the colonial aims of Britain. I condemn them. I am not for colonialization. I am not for going to others' countries. I am not going to teach democracy to Afghanistan or Iraq.
So let me put it like this, because I think that what we are talking about here is something that I very often refer to as saying a critical loyalty is to be loyal to the country when the country is right, and critical with the country when the country or the state of the country is wrong. So critical loyalty is the only way to be a good citizen. For Muslims, by the way, or people of other faiths or with no faith as agnostics or atheists. So to be critical and to have this critical loyalty to the country. But when you have some scholars, Muslim scholars, saying at the end of the day, whatever is the situation, when it comes to the West, you can't talk about justice because what they want has nothing to do with justice. What would be your answer?
But there we have to be very careful about one thing. This holds true for British Muslims, Muslims in the West, as well as Muslims in India. My lot of time was spent in India, where I my master's and doctorate and all this. So I have been looking at this problem from a long time. The question
because in India it's the same.
It's the same question. So we have to guard against one thing, that we are not traitors. We are not fifth columnists. We are not mercenaries. We are not working for this Muslim country. For example, in Britain.
Who is this?
For example, in Britain, I am not anybody's agent.
Okay.
I am a British citizen. I owe to this land. I owe to these people.
Okay.
If somebody invades Britain, I have to defend it.
So you would say, as a British citizen, this is my country and they are my country.
They are my people, I owe to them.
Okay.
And I owe to them Islamically in the same way as the Jews of Medina owed to the defense of Medina.
Yes.
They broke their treaties, they were condemned by God and Prophet. But they should have kept to the treaty and they should have defended Medina.
Okay, so in the name of this belonging, what are the conditions? When are you involved in the army, and when you say no to the army?
Now that is the critical question.
Yes, exactly. This is the main question now.
That is the sort of technical question, that when you go to the army, You can't be selective, saying yes or no. I won't go to Afghanistan, but I will do this. You can't be looking at the job description and saying yes and no. Now, that's a technical question which has to be resolved. But in essence, it is that we are not supporting colonial aims of Britain. Now, for example, I'll tell you, there's a British Armed Forces Muslim Association. They have put up a website. In the website, the purpose of the website is this. I mean, this is very relevant to our discussion. They say that this site is dedicated to their services, to the services of Muslims in British Army. This site is dedicated to their service and sacrifice in defense of Great Britain and in the service of peace and stability throughout the world as a force of good. Now, defense of Great Britain, okay, but the defense of in the service of peace and stability, what? Throughout the world as a force of good, what? We reject it. They don't represent a force of good, and they should not export, they should not drop democracy through bombs. We reject it.
But it could be something else that they are aiming at, which is within the army, wherever there is good, we will support as British citizens. Meaning that they are not saying that everything which is coming from the British Army is good. They are saying that they want to promote what is good everywhere. Would you agree with this or not?
Not really. This is what they think is a sort of a mission which they, as I earlier told you, they give it a moral twist as a force for good. But this is basically a colonial mission, going to Afghanistan and going to all these places, going to the entering others' houses. It is this is definitely not. I mean, this is definitely not good.
But that's exactly the point, because what you are saying is that within the British Army you have British Muslim soldiers, and that they have to deal with the issue and say, okay, what are the limits? I myself was questioned by many soldiers and in the United States, and they were telling me, look, we ask some scholars, and some scholars say, no, never. You can't go and you cannot be involved in Afghanistan. And other scholars were saying, no, show your loyalty to the United States and go, and to Britain. So it's a question of showing. You have to prove, and this is sometimes what the state is expecting from Muslim soldiers. And myself, I responded, no, you don't have to prove anything. You are a citizen, and as you said, you belong. Yeah. So at the end, it's a question of principle. If you think it's right, you go. If you think it's wrong, you don't. Whatever is the enemy, Muslims or people of other faiths, that's not the point. The point is justice. This is what you are saying. So would you go as far as to advocate what happened, for example, with Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay during the Vietnamese War, saying it's a conscientious objection. I cannot go there because the whole point is that this war is unjust, unfair. Will you go for that?
Yes.
That's the point, nothing else. And so the people are going to say at the end, okay, if you go for this, you might be perceived as not loyal to the country.
Yeah, but it is the same thing as, for example, if it is not a bad comparison, but it might be helpful in understanding the point. If someone who's basically a thief, and he asks you to be loyal in his acts of theft. I mean, your loyalty, for you, loyalty does not mean that. You have some loyalty to that guy, but your loyalty does not extend to supporting his aims of theft.
So at the end, you are loyal to your principles.
We are loyal to our principles, and it is out of our principles that we are loyal to the land we live in. We owe to it, we owe to our people, whether Muslims or non-Muslims. We owe to our neighbors. They must find us the best people in their neighborhood. A non-Muslim must find a Muslim. They must find us more useful, more sacrificing, more selfless neighbors than what ordinarily others of their own faith are. They must find us more selfless than that. But it's only that. It's not that we should support them in unholy and all those colonial aims.
Okay, let me be practical.
Yeah.
You have a young American Muslim soldier.
Yeah.
He comes to you and says, okay, look, the American army is calling me now. I'm 20, 22. I don't know if I have to go. I'm a Muslim. I'm a practicing Muslim. I'm a believer. Shall I go? What would be your advice? In a clear position,
Yeah,
what
I would say no, don't go.
You would say, don't go.
Don't go. Yes.
So why? You said first you have to decide based on your principles, and then you say don't go.
No, I mean, if it is, that is...
Why?
That is,
so tell me why, what would be your answer and why?
no, that is the whole point. I mean, if he is going in a war which is unjust and which is the colonial, which is for the colonial objectives, his loyalty does not lie with that.
But before going to a specific war, just to be involved in the army, yes or no?
That's what I told you earlier. I mean, it's a difficult choice there. Once you are in the army, you have to obey. You can't pick and choose and have a job description of every assignment.
So you better avoid being involved.
It is then better.
Okay.
I mean, unless Western governments understand this point, and they create some mechanism that Muslims are not sent on these expeditions. They are kept for something which...
But it cannot work. You know it's not going to happen.
I mean, unless it is a hypothetical...
Yes. Let me just a very quick answer from you on this. What would you say or respond to people saying, you know, that means exactly we cannot trust you because you are among us, you belong to the country until a certain limit. We can't trust you. What would be your answer?
Yeah, my honest answer will be that you can trust, and you can trust me more than anyone else. But as far as the imperial objectives are concerned, we are not with that.
So thank you so much. I think that this was a very interesting discussion, a very difficult topic because what is heard by Muslim citizens and soldiers today, it's very contradictory because we have many views. And what we said is at the end, it's a question of principles. It's not a question of who is the enemy, Muslims or people of other faiths.
And army is not simply a job, it's a job involving life.
Okay, so I just wanted to summarize that. So the point is, ask about the principles and they take a decision. And the last point that you are making, it might be better not to be involved if you want to avoid having to take a critical position after this. And there is still something which is acknowledged by the West, which is, or the Western legislations, which is conscientious objection. And we cannot go, and it happened with Christians, with Jews, with Muslims, and other people saying, no, I can't do it because it's against my principles. Well, that's all we have time for. Please let us know your thoughts and views on any of the shows you have seen, and here is the way to contact us.
Islam and Life welcomes your opinion, so please send us your suggestions as well as criticism on any of the shows you have seen or you would like to see. You can do all this by emailing us at islamandlife@presstv.co.uk. You can also be part of our online platform by joining our Facebook page, Islam and Life on Press TV, where you can share your thoughts with other Islam and Life fans, engage with debate, and view past shows.
Finally, I would like to thank my guest, Dr. Sayyid Inayatullah Andrabi. Thank you so much for your presence and your input. And I hope to see you next week, inshallah.